by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
That's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks.
And we're back. Welcome to the Duke Report, a platform built to restore reason in an age of manipulation. Here we investigate the systems that shape belief. We study the structure of language, power, and persuasion, what I call EpiWar, the war on how we know what we know. Our goal is to deliver tools and understanding that expose these mechanisms and return clarity to the individual mind. From the ashes of the Pacific Palisades fire on January 7th, 2025, I rebuilt this project with a purpose: to create a resource for thinkers, researchers, and truth seekers. At DukeReportBooks.com, you'll find nearly 1,000 books, each paired with in-depth summaries, podcasts, and explainers. On SoundCloud, over 200 deep dive episodes expand the conversation. And on YouTube, new short explainers arrive daily with sharp, focused, and now I can't see my teleprompter, and built-in form free thinkers across the world. This work is offered freely, no paywalls, no algorithmic gatekeepers. If you value it, subscribe at thedukereport.substack.com or support me directly through buymeacoffee.com/thedukereport. Your contribution keeps this project alive and independent, battle-free. And I really need to learn how to read a teleprompter. The battle for freedom begins in the mind. Strengthen your discernment, question the frame, and live free in truth. And one day I'll figure out how to do this correctly. In any case, welcome everybody. And my hair looks kind of crazy. I'm going to turn off the center stage from Apple here for a second and show you my t-shirt. The t-shirt of the day is the, I got to stand up straight. We Need More Rope. The We Need More Rope t-shirt, which you can get by clicking on a link that Jessica has put into the comment section. I mean the chat. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, this has been a bumbling kickoff, but let's keep going. Today, I wanted to talk about EpiWar, and part of the reason that I wanted to talk about EpiWar is because I was having a chat back and forth with Robert Frederick at the Hidden Life is Best, and he wanted to know where he could read more about EpiWar, and I realized that I've kind of posted drips and drabs of it, and I mention it from time to time. I mention it all the time, but I've never really done a kind of an in-depth coverage on what EpiWar is and what it's all about. And I just want to share with you kind of how I started my line of thought today. And let me go find this post. Here it is. So I'm going to share this post. Share screen. And it's an article that somebody sent me called Elon Musk is helping the U.S. intelligence turn thousands of satellites into a planet-wide brain to spy on everything all the time, which I think is probably true. But it made me start thinking about something else that I had noticed about Elon Musk earlier, and that is this: that he's pushing this heavy lift program that he calls Starship, which he claims is going to be used for interplanetary exploration, which I don't believe, because I don't believe that the Pentagon and the Defense Department are really interested in interplanetary exploration. I do believe that they're interested in something more like a low orbit battle station. And what occurred to me is that the word Mars also, besides it being a planet, it's also a god, and it's a god of it's the Roman god of war. And then I saw this movie called The Creator, and I'll play a clip from it in a second. I'll probably keep the sound turned down on The Creator, because The Creator has this interesting look. It kind of looks exactly like the Tesla logo. And so when I was thinking about it after watching this terrible movie, which I've seen twice, I think I advise everyone to go see the movie, not because it's a good movie, because it's not a good movie, but it's got so much metadata about what the current status quo thinking is among the oligarchy and the elites, and what they actually want us to be believing, that I think it's worth seeing. And so let me see if I've got a clip here that I can show you. And like I said, I'll probably have to turn the sound down, or I'll get some kind of a strike. Let me see. Add this to the stage. I guess I got to take this one out. Take this one out. Put this one in. And I'm gonna we'll try this video. Okay. I'm going to turn off the volume, because I believe it's the so here's the Nomad, and it's showing up, and basically the conceit of this movie. Spoiler alert if you're worried about wanting to see it. I'm gonna give you some spoilers. So here's the giant Tesla logo that's flying in over this village, and this village is occupied. Look at that. Looks like the Tesla logo, right? And it's flying in, and this village is occupied by the friendly AI robots who have been targeted by the evil humans, who are out to destroy all of the AI robots who are kind and only of service to humans. Because this is kind of this inversion, and inversion is a piece of metadata. So whenever you see a conceit for an idea and it's upside down, it indicates something, right? And I'm going to talk about what that indicates later. But so the conceit, which is the whole idea behind what the message of this movie is inverted. That is, AI, which is supposed to help us, winds up becoming the enemy of evil humanity, and evil humanity is out there to destroy it. So I'm going to take this off for a second. I think that you get the idea. Maybe I'll jump ahead here to something else where we can really see Nomad and see what here it is. See what Nomad is. And here's the little Christ figure is this little kid who's an AI robot who is a weapon. He is a weapon system. Anyway, I digress. I'm gonna pull this out and stop this. And let me fix my screen. Anyway, so. I was looking at it. I was looking at this article on Elon Musk, and I thought they're building a battle station up there. That's what all this heavy lift Starship is all about. It's about a low orbit space station, And this is a form of epistemology. Telling us that there's heavy lift and that we're going to Mars is epistemological warfare. So let me go over an outline that I put together, because I actually tried to be organized today, as opposed to the way that I normally do things, which is winging it. And so let me just read you this. Today's episode is about a ubiquitous form of war most people never see. We don't see it by design. And that single idea reminds me of the work of Robert Frederick over at The Hidden Life is Best. Its hidden nature reveals its source. That is, the whole idea that it's hidden tells us something about it, okay? This war doesn't happen on a battlefield, and it doesn't need bullets. It happens in words, pictures, in sound, in language and symbols, in the quiet manipulations that fool you into deciding what you think is true. I'm going to adjust my mic here a little bit. I call it EpiWar, which is short for epistemological warfare perpetrated by a corporate cabal. It's the deliberate shaping of how knowledge is formed, how belief is engineered, and how perception becomes what we believe to be real. Conflict and ideology both begin with how people know what they know. Once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. It runs through education, journalism, entertainment, and technology, through every system that tells us who we are and what the world means. EpiWar isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's the mother of all conspiracy theories, the mater of all conspiracy theories, the matter. The first step towards freedom is recognition. So today, I want to help you recognize the thing that shapes the age, the war beneath all the wars, the EpiWar. So there is an unseen conflict. The central claim that I'm making is that the decisive wars of history are fought through information first, not weapons. Epistemological warfare is the deliberate manipulation of how humans form, validate, and transmit knowledge, how we do it. The field of operation is our perception, our language, and our belief, because our language primarily frames our belief. So if the world seems fragmented and irrational, who benefits from the confusion of meaning? And I think that one of the things that I've noticed a lot lately, and I've noticed it in a few different places, but confusion itself is metadata. That is, if someone is telling you something and it's confusing you, or if there are messages that are coming out and the messages are making things more confusing than understanding, then that's metadata. And why am I bringing that up? Because the confusion, if you assume that you're confused by something, you can go to the idea that maybe you don't have all the information, or maybe you're not that smart, or maybe you don't know as much as you should know. That's one way of looking at it. And I think that often that's the assumption that the people who are making the confusing commentary want you to believe. But there's another way of looking at it. And the other way of looking at it is that you're being confused on purpose, and that it's not, the thing that you're being presented with is not actually meant to be understood. And I'm going to roll a few videos today. These are the videos that I make when I'm doing my my explainers. So excuse the AI voice. But one of the things that I've noticed in making these explainers, and I've made over 60 of them, you can find them on Substack and you can find them on YouTube. And what I've done is I've taken many of the books that are what I think are the most essential books from the book section of the Duke Report, which is dukereportbooks.com. You can find almost 1,000 books that I've done 1,500 word summaries, and many of them I've done half an hour long AI generated podcasts on those books. But one of the things that I've noticed, again, metadata, as I go through all of these different books, is each and every author of the books that I find to be the essential reading of for people who want to understand how the world really works, almost all of them point out an item that they think is important that has either been erased from the historical record, or misframed, skewed, hermeneutically changed in a way that changes the meaning of it. So I'm going to play for you a video on that I made today. I haven't posted it yet, but it's on this guy Veblen, who I discovered through Guido Preparata, and kind of came up with the central conceit for his books, Conjuring Hitler and The Incubation of Nazism. And Veblen was commenting about the Treaty of Versailles in real time. So I'm gonna play this little video for you, and then we'll come back to epistemological warfare.
Welcome to The Explainer. We've all heard the story, the Treaty of Versailles, this catastrophic mistake that led right to World War II. But what if it wasn't a mistake at all? Today, we're diving into a really shocking theory that claims the treaty was actually a deliberate, calculated success with a hidden and much, much darker goal. Yeah, for more than a century, the story we've been told is pretty simple. The famous economist John Maynard Keynes really nailed this view down. He argued the Treaty of Versailles was just a total failure. A peace so harsh, so vindictive, that it absolutely crippled Germany, fanned the flames of resentment, and basically made another world war a sure thing. But what if I told you there was one thinker, back then, who saw something completely different? Not a mistake, but a meticulously crafted plan. He argued that the chaos that came next wasn't some tragic accident, it was the whole point. Okay, so the man behind this wild theory was an American economist named Thorstein Veblen. And according to the author Guido Preparata, Veblen wasn't just smart. He was like the singular clairvoyant of his time, maybe the only one who really got what was happening with the dark geopolitical games that would go on to define the entire 20th century. And here's where they fundamentally split. While Keynes looked at the treaty and saw a final, brutal end to the war, Veblen saw the exact opposite. For him, it was just a strategic starting point for the next war. He basically called it a cynical sham. Veblen actually laid this whole thing out in a review he wrote of Keynes' work. It's a piece that Preparata calls Political Economy's Most Extraordinary Document. And in it, Veblen basically argued that the whole story we were being told about a punitive peace was a deliberate lie. So, the big question is, how? How did Veblen supposedly uncover this plot? How did he see what basically nobody else could? Well, he found a clue. Not in what the treaty said, but in what it deliberately and very, very cleverly left out. I mean, on the surface, the terms looked designed to just crush Germany financially. The amount they demanded in reparations was insane, and it led to hyperinflation and incredible suffering for ordinary German people. The outrage seemed totally justified. But Veblen, he thought all that public outrage was just for show. He called it an unwarranted affectation. He saw what he called a collusive remissness in the terms, which is a fancy way of saying he believed the winners were secretly and intentionally going easy on Germany. They were just acting tough. And this, right here, was Veblen's smoking gun. While the German people were being absolutely crushed, the treaty was written to carefully avoid anything that would confiscate the property of Germany's ruling class, the powerful industrialists Veblen called the war-guilty absentee owners. All their wealth, completely untouched. And that just begs the question, right? If your goal is to punish Germany, why on earth would the Allies protect the very people who financed and profited from the war while you bring the regular population to its knees? Veblen's answer was as simple as it was shocking. The Allied powers and the German elite, they weren't actually enemies. They were partners, secretly united against a new, and in their minds, a far more terrifying common enemy. And that common enemy, well, that leads us right to the hidden motive at the very heart of the Treaty of Versailles. You got to remember, this is all happening right after the 1917 revolution in Russia. For the Western elites, the real fear wasn't another war with Germany, it was the spread of Bolshevism from the new Soviet Russia. Veblen argued they needed to rearm Germany to create a powerful military state that could act as a bulwark against that communist threat. And this is the core of the whole Veblenian thesis. The impossible reparations were never actually meant to be paid. They were, in his words, a diplomatic bluff. Their real job was to humiliate and enrage the German public, to create the perfect political storm for a militant, reactionary government to grab power, a government that would be fiercely anti-communist. And this is where the story goes from a wild historical theory to something, honestly, kind of spooky. This is the future Veblen predicted as the treaty's logical, calculated result. His theory wasn't just about the past, it was a terrifyingly accurate prophecy. I mean, think about this. Decades before it happened, Veblen laid out the whole roadmap. First, he said the engineered anger would give rise to a reactionary, far-right regime. Second, that this movement would have this fanatical, almost religious nature to it. And third, that this new German power would eventually be pointed east to destroy the Soviets. A direct prophecy of Operation Barbarossa. And if that's not specific enough for you, get this. Years before the treaty was even signed, he had already sketched out the profile of the kind of leader who would emerge from all this chaos, describing a haranguing Führer. Veblen's analysis just forces us to ask this deeply unsettling question. It suggests a deliberate plan behind events that we've always thought of as a tragic, unforeseen accident. It reframes the entire history of the time between the wars, not as a failure of peace, but maybe as the successful execution of a plan that would plunge the entire world into darkness.
So, get rid of this. So Veblen doesn't call it epistemological warfare. Preparata does not call it epistemological warfare. But what I keep seeing is explanations for things as this information was left out, or this isn't exactly what was really happening. And all of these things are indicators to me of a deliberate attempt to reframe reality in a way that people get the wrong impression of what is actually really going on. So I'll jump back to the origin. The origin of the word EpiWar. It's Greek, or it comes from the Greek. Episteme is knowledge, and polmos is war. So EpiWar is the ongoing struggle to control the conditions under which the truth is recognized. So all of these things that Veblen is talking about all fit under that category. It's not fought with armies, but it's fought with framing and selective interpretation and symbols and words and bafflegab, meaningless words, or words that are designed to confuse people. And it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in our education system. It's in journalism. It's in entertainment. It's in digital communication. And that's the war front. Okay, so in a way, we are on the battlefront right now. If you're sitting here and you're watching this video, we're on the front line of this war because it's everywhere around us. It's every other click that you can click away from at this point. So one of the things that kind of became a rubric for me when I started working this out is I went into linguistics and I discovered the meta model that was delineated by Richard Bandler and John Grinder, but I think that it's built on top of work that Noam Chomsky did. And my guess is that it's probably thousands of years old. It's not a new idea, but the big idea is that the way that things are controlled is either by deletion, distortion, or generalization. And you can apply this on a micro level. It's funny, you can apply the meta model on a micro level by analyzing the individual words that are coming out of people's mouths or written down in the form of sentences or paragraphs. But you can also kind of go meta on it, which is probably why it's called the meta model, and you can use it as a rubric for determining whether or not there are things that you can explore in a way to find the truth. So deletion is information or context that's removed in order to narrow your perception. So I'm writing an article right now, I haven't published yet, called the Uncle from Hell, about Edward VII. And we're all told in school that World War I started because Franz Ferdinand was shot, and there were all of these treaties that these stupid countries had set up, and it caused them to all declare war on each other. And that's simply not true. Okay, it's simply not true. And the truth has been deleted, and it's been deleted with malice aforethought, in a very organized and deliberate way. But if you actually don't know that Edward VII went around and created all of these treaties in order to be able to facilitate this world war, which had been planned since 1908, and that Winston Churchill, on the eve of that war, mobilized as the first Sea Lord of the Admiralty in Great Britain, mobilized the entire British fleet. So I don't know if there's a comparison today. It would be like going to DEFCON 5 or something in the United States, like putting all of our nuclear facilities on the highest level of readiness. It's the most proactive thing that anyone could do in order to make your enemies believe that you're about to pummel them militarily. Okay. And Winston Churchill did that unilaterally, or at least we don't, if he did it with the direction of anybody, it's never been written down. We don't know why he did it, but he did it. And the Germans knew that he did it. So there were all kinds of provocative things that happened before that war started. And in fact, Germany was the very last country to mobilize its forces. And there's several books, like I talk about 2 world wars and Hitler, but there's other books that talk about the same thing. So that information is deleted from our history books. We don't get that. We get a different story. We get the distortion. Distortion meaning it's altered to redirect understanding. So it's not just propaganda and euphemism and moral inversions. It's our history books. And there's a book that I did an explainer on called The Poisoned Loving Cup. This has been an ongoing program in the United States of America, in Great Britain, in all of the English-speaking countries. And certainly it probably is manifest in other countries also, any Western allied countries, where these lies are just enshrined in. And the way that it works is that the oligarchs will endow chairs at universities, specifically history departments. They will put in people like Rhodes Scholars. Hey, we'll give you $1 million, or we'll give you $10 million if you establish this chair in your history department. And we want a say on who the professor is going to be, who's going to be the endowed chair, the emeritus chair. And then they wind up putting in a professor who's been trained in at Oxford or Cambridge in this British skewed version of history that makes the Germans the bad guys, and Winston Churchill is one of the greatest living human beings. And this is all, if you look at the historical record, it's not true. Okay. The third mechanism of EpiWar is generalization. So cases are limited and universalized to control behavior. So people come up with slogans like "Make America Great Again" or "Black Lives Matter," and things are pushed into in ideological absolutes like liberal or conservative. These are fake categories which are created in order to control people. And then they wind up becoming dogmatically institutionalized. So EpiWar is really effective in its invisibility. The more natural something feels, like I was a true believer. On January 6th, I was the official photographer of Stop the Steal on the Capitol steps of the United States of America. And I went there because I believed that there was a way through public participation and protests that the election of the president of the United States of America could be impacted. It just simply wasn't true. And that was the last day that I believed that. It took me a couple of years to figure out why. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I wrote an article about this called "The Leading Indicators of EpiWar," and maybe I don't know if there's a way that I could put this up. I should have made this into a slide. Oh, maybe I could figure it out. Let's do it this way. I'm doing this on the fly here, folks. It's like Bill O'Reilly. We'll do it live. There we go. Image file. Just give me a second. There it is. Instant slide, Peter. Oh, no, that's not it. Get rid of that. You can do it, Peter. I have confidence in you. It must be on my desktop. Yep, there it is. There we go. All right. So these are the four, what I call the leading indicators of EpiWar. And what that means is that if you take a look at something on the meta level, if you step out of a narrative, Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. Okay. You could get involved in the it was fake or it was real, or in the he was killed by whatever group you want to pick. The way that I look at it is that how well does that narrative serve power? Okay. When Charlie Kirk is taken out, whether or not it's real or fake, that story is out there, right? How well does that story serve power? In whose interests does it best serve? That's the question to ask, right? That the second leading indicator is that the more that something is turned into a transmedia spectacle, that is, when something appears in movies, on television, in books, in fiction, in nonfiction, when it becomes ubiquitous, like transhumanism, okay, or AI, or, pick your meme, right? When you see the same idea that is being projected across all of these different medias at the same time, then you need to ask the question, okay, am I being manipulated? Is that EpiWar? And is it true? Okay, this is where I got the silver strand hypothesis, right? There's so much energy, time, resources, treasure that has been put into selling the nuclear weapon story that I started to disbelieve it. Likewise, the moon landing. The more energy that gets cross-media energy that gets put into selling you on this idea, then I think the more that you need to question it. That's my default. Okay. Death of lightning rod persona is always convenient to someone. Charlie Kirk's death, whether or not you believe it's real, it was convenient to somebody. Okay. And I'm not talking about the lone nut. Okay. Whether or not you're talking about Andrew Breitbart or Michael Hastings or JFK or even Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. all of them dying winds up benefiting somebody. Okay. And so you can go with the lone nut, which is where they want you to go. But my thought on it, whenever I hear somebody dying, when they shouldn't die, and again, I was quite surprised last week on Substack. You have to pay to leave a comment on one of my articles. So the people who leave comments are the people who are subscribers. And so when people disagree with me, like somebody disagreed with me on the explainer on Palisades Oil that I posted the other day, they left me an incredibly thoughtful disagreement, like well argued. And I haven't had a chance, because I was getting ready for the show today, but I haven't had a chance to go back and answer that person. But the comment was incredibly thoughtful. And I welcome people who disagree with me in comments on any of the stuff that I post. And part of the reason that I require people to be subscribers, I stole that business model from something called Powerline Blog, where you could read the articles for free, but if you wanted to leave a comment, you had to pay for it. On notes on Substack, you don't have to be a subscriber to leave a comment, and that's just a hole I think that they've got in Substack. But it's funny, when I posted something about Neil Armstrong the other day, being things that I noticed shortly before he passed away. Neil Armstrong was reported to have lost the end of his finger in a weird accident on a farm, which I found incredulous. I thought it was very odd, because this guy was like a Navy fighter pilot and a test pilot, and like probably the 99th percentile physical specimen human being. Admittedly, he was 82. He was older. I don't know if he was 82 when he lost his finger. He was 82 when he passed away, but he passed away under weird circumstances. He had heart surgery that was supposed to be a kind of a routine heart surgery, and he wound up dying in the surgery. And it was so questionable as to the circumstances of his death that his family was rewarded with a $6 million malpractice settlement. So I always thought that was weird. So I posted it, and it's amazing the number of trolls that came out. When I question nuclear weapons, I get vehement and personal attacks on me. When I try to establish that Zionism was born in the city of London, and that I contend, based on my research, that the state of Israel is controlled by the city of London and their satellite on Wall Street. People go nuts in notes. I had a guy who was kind of like a a guy. I don't know if it's a person or what it is, but an account that called Lebensraum von Hindenburg, which Lebensraum, for people who don't know, it's the German word for living space. And it was something that Adolf Hitler, when he was running as a political candidate, was continually screaming that Germany needed living space. They needed living space. And of course, this is all coming out of, Tavistock Institute, which was called Wellington House at the time, and then being fed to him in Germany. But it was all about getting the German people all jacked up to go fight a war and attack Russia, right? So this guy, Hindenburg von Lebensraum, or Lebensraum von Hindenburg, is attacking me because I'm claiming that the state of Israel and Zionists in general are being controlled by the city of London, which is my thesis. I got vehemently attacked when I said that nuclear weapons or the moon landing are fake. the more I get attacked on these things by these people who make ad hominem attacks on me and use cause effect, complex equivalency, nominalization, and all of the other kind of meta model forms of linguistic attack, then I think, I'm over the target. It's kind of, where I'm coming from. And in any case, getting back to the death of lightning rod persona is always convenient to someone. So you've got to take a look at it. And the fourth one is that the Library of Alexandria is an ongoing fire. Many of the books, and I'm about to play another one. I'll take a break from my talking here for a second. I'll play another one. And again, this is stuff that is being left out of our education system. It's being deleted. So George Orwell's memory hole is not something that was going to happen in the future. It's something that has been going on for thousands of years. And if you realize that, then you can start to try to figure out where the missing pieces are, because it turns out that there are a lot of people out there in the world who have figured this out. And with that, let me see what the next one that I've got here is.
Now, when you think about the Protestant Reformation, what comes to mind?
Yeah, so let's. So this is a book. Again, this was suggested by Robert Frederick over at The Hidden Life is Best, and it is a slightly different telling of the entire Protestant Reformation.
Probably a lot about faith, right? Kings, queens, big religious debates. But what if I told you there's another side to that story? A much darker side. One that's less about God and more about, well, money, power, and a massive heist. We're going to dive into a pretty radical retelling of this whole period, and it comes from a source you would probably never expect. So get this. The writer William Cobbett calls it the rising of the rich against the poor. I mean, wow. That's not what they teach you in history class, is it? He's not talking about a theological dispute here. He's calling it a straight-up class war. In a statement that bold, it just completely flips the script. It makes you stop and ask, yeah, who would actually describe the Protestant Reformation that way? I mean, who has the nerve to look at this massive moment in history, one we usually see as this great enlightenment, and call it an act of total devastation against ordinary people? Well, to really get where this outrageous claim is coming from, you've got to understand the man behind it. And let me tell you, William Cobbett was not your typical historian. Okay, so this guy, Cobbett, he was a complete outsider. We're talking born to poor parents, a farm boy, then a private soldier. And get this, he taught himself grammar while earning just 6 pence a day. He literally used his knapsack as a bookcase. It's an incredible story. And through all that, he gained what he called his most valuable possession, a thorough knowledge of the English language. So you see, he wasn't some stuffy academic writing from an ivory tower. He knew what life was like for the lower classes because he was one of them. That firsthand experience is what gives his analysis so much weight. He's writing from the ground up. And man, his perspective is absolutely brutal. He basically calls the whole Reformation a sham, a lie cooked up as an excuse for a violent cash grab. For Cobbett, this story doesn't start with some big crisis of faith. No, it starts with the king's, let's call it a crisis of desire. Which brings us to the first big myth Cobbett just wants to tear down. You know, the whole idea that the English Reformation happened because King Henry VIII was having this noble, or at least understandable, personal and religious crisis. Yeah, see, the timing is just everything. At first, Henry VIII was a huge opponent of Protestantism. He even wrote a book against it. But then what happens? The Pope won't give him a divorce from his wife of over 20 years. And suddenly, his deeply held religious beliefs get real flexible real fast. Cobbett's point is that this was never about piety. It was about power, pure and simple. And if you dared to stand in the king's way, you were going to pay a truly terrible price. And Cobbett, he doesn't just give you dry facts. He paints this gut-wrenching picture of the human cost. He talks about Bishop Fisher, a man the king used to call his father, being dragged to the scaffold after rotting in a filthy prison for 15 months, barely even clothed. This wasn't some polite disagreement or a theological debate. This was enforcement by sheer terror. But this kind of insane tyranny was met with some absolutely incredible defiance. Take the Countess of Salisbury. She was 70 years old, condemned without any trial. When they told her to put her head on the block, she basically said, "Nope, my head doesn't bow to tyrants. If you want it, you'll have to come and get it." The accounts Cobbett uses say the executioner literally had to chase her around the scaffold, hacking at her until she finally fell. I mean, that's the brutal reality of this new church, according to Cobbett. Okay, so after all that, to justify the next big step, which was a massive property grab, the new guys in charge needed a villain. And they found a perfect one: the monasteries. The plan was to paint them as totally corrupt and useless. You've probably heard the stereotypes, right? Monkish ignorance, superstition, the idea that monasteries were just filled with lazy monks, these drones who didn't contribute anything. Well, Cobbett says that's a load of nonsense. He calls it what it was: pure propaganda, cooked up to justify what he thinks was the single greatest act of theft in English history. And here's what makes Cobbett's argument so smart. He doesn't just rant. He uses Protestant sources, like a guy named Bishop Tanner, to totally tear this myth apart. He shows that, far from being lazy places, the monasteries were the entire social infrastructure of England. Think about it. They were the schools, the libraries, the hospitals, the homeless shelters. They even protected the weak from bullying local lords. They were the social safety net. And you know what? Cobbett argues that destroying that safety net, that was the whole point. That's what opened the door for the rising of the rich. Just look at this number, 2 million. And that's a conservative estimate of the acres of land seized from the church and local guilds. We're talking about one of the biggest transfers of wealth in the history of England. It was taken from institutions that were built to serve the poor and handed on a silver platter directly to the king's friends. So here's how it went down, step by devastating step. First, Parliament dissolves hundreds of monasteries. Then, all their land gets handed over to the king's buddies, creating this whole new class of landlords. But here's the kicker. These new guys, unlike the monks, felt zero obligation to be charitable. So what did they do? They immediately jacked up the rents, fenced off common lands the poor depended on, and kicked people out. And just like that, for the first time in something like 900 years, England suddenly has a permanent class of paupers. Desperate, landless people. And this wasn't some abstract economic thing you'd read in a textbook. Cobbett uses this really powerful image to show how it felt in real life. He says England went from being a land of roast beef to, all of a sudden, a land of dry bread or of oatmeal porridge. A country that was famous for how well-fed its people were was basically plunged into poverty overnight. And for Cobbett, if you want one symbol for the sheer barbarism of this whole thing, this is it. They demolished the tomb of Alfred the Great. I mean, this is the guy who basically founded English law, learning, liberty, the whole shebang. And they tore down his tomb, sold the lead from his coffin for scrap metal, and just scattered his ashes. To Cobbett, that was like declaring war not just on the poor, but on the very soul of England itself. So where did all this lead? What's the lasting legacy of what Cobbett calls a devastation? Well, according to him, it's a pretty unsettling reality. He says it basically re-engineered English society, and not for the better. This table really lays out Cobbett's whole argument, side by side. On one hand, you've got Catholic England. For 900 years, no official poor laws because there wasn't a permanent class of paupers. The church acted as a guardian. No national debt. Then, after the Reformation, you get Protestant England. The new doctrine of faith alone meant that good works, like charity, weren't theologically necessary anymore. So poof, there goes the foundation for social welfare. What do you get instead? The very first poor laws to manage all the beggars, and, believe it or not, the invention of the national debt to pay for wars. It's a shocking contrast. And for Cobbett, listen, these aren't just little historical footnotes. He's saying the consequences are still baked into our world today. He argues the Reformation wasn't really a great new beginning. It was an end. The end of an England where the poor had a kind of birthright to be taken care of. And it was the beginning of the massive social and economic divides that would shape the next 5 centuries. It was the moment, he says, that the rich rose up against the poor, and they won. So in the end, Cobbett's history isn't really an attack on Protestantism or Catholicism as faiths. It's a really brutal look at how noble-sounding ideas can be used as a smokescreen for plain old greed and a power grab. It challenges us to look under the hood of these big historical moments and ask a very simple and maybe a very unsettling question. Who really benefited?
Alrighty. So back to my notes. So where are we? One of the things, again, and I didn't know this when I started picking these books out to create these explainers. It became evident to me as I continued to do this that the AI is picking up on the fact that this isn't the history that you were taught in school. Now, I don't tell the AI to do that. The AI is trained with what it knows. It's been trained with all of this standard stuff. And when I put in these books, it has to compare what it knows, what it's been trained with what I'm giving it. And so it comes up with the words that says, "Oh, this isn't what you thought it was going to be." So, so we need to learn how to recognize this stuff. And the way that we learn how to recognize it is first and foremost by learning how to, I don't know what other way to say this, but we need to check our reactions to things. You know, Jesus said the meek will inherit the earth, and meek in that Greek form of the word doesn't mean cowering in fear. It means being quietly resolute about trying to understand what's happening. And so we need to be quietly resolute in order to be able to understand this, in order to go meta. Understanding the structure of epistemological warfare allows us to see the manipulation as it happens. Okay. And that becomes really important because if you can see it happening, becoming meek is much easier. If you're, somebody sent me the Charlie Kirk video within a few minutes of it happening without any kind of preamble. And if I had known about it, I would have never clicked on it. But I was emotionally wrecked by that video for a day. Like it gave me bad dreams, you know? And I wish I had never seen it because I don't know if that video is a real video or not, but I do know that because I thought it was real when I saw it, that it had this deleterious effect on me. And it took me a whole day before I could start to process it, but I wasn't going to fall for Charlie Kirk the same way that I fell for Butler, Pennsylvania, because I think that was, I don't think that the story is true about Butler, Pennsylvania. I don't know if Trump was in on it or not, but it certainly doesn't look good from where I'm sitting. And we didn't get all the answers. We're not getting all the answers on the Palisades fire. We're not getting all the answers on Charlie Kirk. We didn't get any of the answers on the Las Vegas shooter or John F. Kennedy getting killed or Robert F. Kennedy getting killed. We never get the straight answer on any of those things. That's the metadata. Okay. If you're not getting the straight story, that's the metadata, right? Okay. It means someone is controlling the narrative. Then the next question is who's controlling the narrative? And my default always goes back to the City of London and their agents and assigns. Okay. So we need to learn how to start recognizing this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I think we got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to try to answer some questions. And then I have one more video that's about money that I want to play. And if you guys haven't been following me on Substack, I think I've done 60 of them so far. Somebody said I was carpet bombing their inbox. I can't do this forever. I mean, there's a limited number of books. But I've been trying to figure out, once I saw how valuable, now, for example, never mind. Once I discovered how valuable the explainers were, I thought this is a really good way to get the people who follow this channel to catch up on this stuff. I don't like being the smart guy in the room. And I'm standing on the shoulders of Richard Grove and James Corbett and Jay Dyer and Courtney Turner. There's a bunch of people out there who have done a lot more work on this than I have, and they've been doing it for a lot longer than I have. But what I bring to the table is my understanding of the tools and how to synthesize things. Because as a creative director for 20 years, that's basically what my job was to take a bunch of confusing stuff and figure out a way to put it together in a package so that people could understand whatever it is that I was working on. All right. So Allison V says England is bad now. Well, I guess I don't have reference. Let's be clear. It's not the English people. It's the people who are in control of the city of London. Okay. I'm writing this article that I've been writing it for 2 days. I haven't finished it yet. And it's called The Uncle from Hell. It's about Edward VII. And Edward VII went around and created all these treaties with basically his relatives. Okay. And he lied. Kaiser Wilhelm II was his nephew. So when he passed away, when Edward VII passed away, King George V, Elizabeth I's father, was first cousins to the Kaiser, the king. Kaiser means king of, or Caesar. It means the Caesar of. Tsar means Caesar. Kaiser means Caesar. So again, we're all talking about Roman Empire. Nicholas II was his first cousin's husband. So Edward VII and then his son, George V, basically backstabbed their first cousins and wound up either having them dethroned or killed. Okay. And my thought on that is that he was probably compromised, Edward VII. He probably was put into that position because he didn't have any choice. Because how many people go around plotting to have their families killed? It's very Shakespearean, right? It's very biblical, right? That these people would go around and organize. When you understand the depth of detail of how Edward VII went about setting up his cousin, the Kaiser, and his cousin, the Tsar of Russia, to their detriment, it's pretty evil. And then you have to start. Yeah, somebody said Hamlet. Then you have to start asking yourself the question: why would anybody do that, right? And because they're pure evil, right? Is that why he did it? No, my guess is he didn't have a choice, because they told him, look, the Rothschilds and the Cecils and the other people who came to meet with him said, look, you can either be the last king, or there'll be no kings. So if you help us, you can be the last king. The Windsor monarchy, which is really the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Somebody's got a question about Germans. You could be the last king, or we'll just get rid of all the kings. But if you help us, you can be the last king. And I think that's probably the deal that Edward VII, in the mafia, they say they'll make you a deal that you can't refuse. So Edward VII's deal was like, he could either be the last king, and the Windsors could be the last monarchy, or there could be no monarchies. So which one do you want? You know, and if you want them to be the last monarchy, then you have to help us take out your cousins. Even the Habsburgs were cousins of the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas. So at the beginning of World War I, there were 4 dynasties, there were 4 empires. At the end of World War I, there was 1 empire, and all of the cousins were taken out. So let's go back to the let's see what questions here. David Armstrong, what do you think about the reframing 5G warfare intentionally not to include, I don't know what CRP is, and attacks on the human body? Well, here's the thing about 5G warfare. I'm talking about the thing that I find curious about epistemological warfare is that, and I could be wrong, somebody in the comments can point me in a direction, but I think I'm the only person who's ever, I think I coined the phrase. And I think I'm the only person talking about it, about epistemological warfare. And that's because, like advertising is a subset of marketing, epistemological warfare is a superset of mind control or psychological warfare. It's above it, right? And a lot of people, I don't hear General Flynn talking about how the Rhodes Scholars rewrote all of American history books. You know what I'm saying? He talks about all the blocking and tackling of psychology, but General Flynn, just not to pick on General Flynn, but I've got a friend who was in Afghanistan, and he spent his first tour in Afghanistan defending opium poppies that were being cultivated by Chinese farmers that were being flown in on U.S. Army helicopters. And he spent his second tour defending pallets of $100 bills that were being delivered to warlords in Afghanistan. General Flynn has to know that this stuff was happening. He has to know who Smedley Butler was. Why doesn't he ever talk about that stuff? And I'm always being accused of the things that I don't talk about, but these things are giant elephants in the room that I don't understand. So I don't know. I did get the 5G warfare book that was written by General Flynn. Somebody just sent it to me in the mail. I don't know why they sent it to me. And I started to look at it and I thought, well, this is all of this stuff is knowing, right? This happens because of that. These are complex equivalences. And what they wind up having the effect of doing is stopping people who are thinking. And that's why when I've been writing a lot of the articles, I wrote the Silver Strand hypothesis. I write it as a thought experiment. I'm not telling you that nuclear weapons are fake. I'm just saying that if you use an epistemological warfare frame and you look at nuclear weapons and you look at my 4 leading indicators of epistemological warfare, it seems more likely, it's less expensive, it's more cost effective, it has more benefits if you don't even actually need to build nuclear weapons. But you need to sell the idea that they exist in order to control everybody that you want to control. And at that point, everybody who claims that they have nuclear weapons is in on it. So China's in on it. France is in on it. Great Britain's in on it. Russia's in on it. The Pakistanis are in on it. India's in on it. The Israelis are in on it. Okay, they're all in on it, right? And that's because they are all allowed to create these dark money fields. Let me pull up this note. I think it's a comment I made. Anyway, somebody asked me something on Substack. Let's see if I can go find it. Here we go. Let's see if I can share this. Oh yeah, and it's on the same thing that we started with this morning when we started the show. So, so this is where we started with Elon Musk and my asking, what Mars could possibly stand for. I don't know what it stands for. And somebody said that they could only do this with our tax money and idiots working for them. And I said back to the supporter, classification, compartmentalization, need to know, and national security are all terms that are used to control a slave society. Without the psyop of existential fear, none of it would work. And what I mean by that is that by convincing us all that nuclear weapons are real, by frying Ethel and Julius Rosenberg in what can only be described truly as a Holocaust, as a burnt offering to Baal or Moloch or whoever it is that they worship, then you need to be able to sell the idea to everybody in the world that nuclear weapons are it's such a giant threat to humanity that if we don't keep all of this stuff secret, and if we don't control the espionage around it, that everyone in the world is going to die. And so the stakes couldn't be higher. And that's why I think that classification, compartmentalization, need to know, and national security are all bullshit. And if Trump was legit, he'd declassify everything. Everything. Okay. And when we all found out that there was no moon landing and the nuclear weapons are not real, then we might need to get some more rope. But I don't see Trump doing that. So anyway, I digress. All right, let me take this down and then go back to the next question. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but if you want to ask a question, try not to use acronyms and stuff. Be direct and ask me. Somebody says, it seems that you are your body, you are your mind. Must be a part of EpiWar. I'm not sure I understand what this means. I wish I did, but maybe somebody else can explain it to me. Oh, same person. I think this is Janusz. Is this Janusz? How about you are your consciousness as an alternative to my previous comment? Oh, thank you for that. You are your ability to see your own frame. Your consciousness is your ability to see your own frame. That my definition of the word consciousness. And it turns out that that's a 3,000-year-old definition. And I wrote a whole Substack about it because Nicholas Bergruen and his AI friends are always looking to redefine the word consciousness. Consciousness is simply your ability to recognize your own frame, which means that you recognize that you are not your perceptions, that your perceptions are being filtered through something, okay, and that you have free will to be able to determine by applying meekness, by applying logos, by applying discernment, that you have the ability to judge that information that's coming in and make a determination for yourself. That's called free will. Okay. Again, I guess if this was framed as a question, I would understand it better. But my definition of consciousness is your ability to recognize your own frame. Okay. To know what your biases are and to benchmark whatever it is that you see with what you know, and then adjudicate that process. Okay. Without just reacting. I don't know if I've answered your question. Here we go. Svartberg, who wrote that great stuff, said, check out the book, The Meaning of the 20th Century. It's their blueprint. Okay, well, I'll do a screenshot here and then I can look it up later. David Armstrong says, I'd love your opinion about In the Shadows of the American Century. Have you read it? No, I haven't read it. I don't know what it is. But I'll screenshot it and then I'll go look for it later. British scholars learning worldwide ethnic divisions and cross-border connections, Black, Lamb, and Gray Faction by R. West about Yugoslavia history like a ball of knots. I guess that's another book. Okay, well, I'll go look. British scholars have, I mean, the best books on a lot of this stuff come out of Cambridge and Oxford because they figure that the only people who are going to read them are people who go to Cambridge and Oxford. And a lot of the biggest lines of bullshit, like the stuff that created by Arnold Toynbee and his ilk, also come out of the same places. So, you got to be careful. Here we go. Leon B says, I just received my copy of Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. It's funny because I was just looking at somebody again. I don't like to pat myself on the back too much because I don't like to think that my ego is, I'm not proud of my ego. But I haven't found another book, including things that have been written by Matt and Cynthia and people who I have a great deal of respect for, I haven't found another book where people are saying, okay, it was plagiarized. Okay, it wasn't the Jews. It seems to be true. Who is it? You know what I mean? Nobody. Why is nobody else asking that question? You know, it blows my mind. I can't be the only person out there. If there's other people who are doing it, let me know. I want to know who they are. I'll have them on the show. Hunter Gatherer says the two Edwards, Edward Gray and Edward the Seventh, are great books. Yes, and I've created explainers, and I just haven't posted them yet. Yeah, that's a great book. It's got some weakness. There's some, again, there's no perfect book, right? My books aren't perfect. My articles aren't perfect. None of these are perfect. There's some giant holes in that book, but it's a good book and it's worth reading. So I will, and I'll post that in the next day or two. So thanks, Hunter Gatherer. How is it that the Germans dominated philosophy in the 19th century and the early 20th, and yet were so played by the Brits? Great question. And I'm still trying to work out the details. Okay, but again, the fact that the Windsors are actually Germans, right? And the Hohenzollerns in Germany, and the Habsburgs in Austria, and the Romanovs in Russia are all related to one another is a curiosity to me. But the conceit, spoiler alert, the conceit in the article that I'm writing about the uncle from hell, is that effectively what happened in World War I, when Edward VII backstabbed his cousins and killed them or dethroned them, what wound up happening was that bloodline dynasties were replaced by immortal corporations. That is, corporations have in recent history been appointed by courts as people. Corporations are people, and in that way, corporations and foundations wind up becoming these immortals. That is, they don't die, right? Steve Jobs died, but Apple Computer lives, right? And Lorene Jobs gets all of his stock, and she puts again, look at the parallels between Lorene Jobs and Erica Kirk, or Georgia Frontieri, or I don't know. There's probably a whole list of women that were married to very powerful men who had control of empires, corporate or political empires, and then they got assumed by these women, pretty blonde women who were married to them. You know, so your question was, how did the Germans get so owned? I think that we think of nations in a post a Congress of Vienna formation of loyalty to nationality, and that I don't think that the people who are in control of things look at the world the same way. I think that they look at countries as inconveniences, and I think a lot of the German philosophy winds up becoming, some of it becomes misdirected and bafflegab. I mean, I think that if you take it apart, if you boil it down to its Gnostic roots, then a lot of it turns out to just be thought experiments, and the genius of it may be overblown, like the genius of William Shakespeare is overblown, and that when you wind up building castles on top of sand, which is what a lot of these ideas are. I mean, I think the Fabians didn't like Karl Marx, not because they didn't think socialism was great, but they thought that violent revolution was not the best way to do it. They thought that taking a long road would have been a much better way to do it, which is why we have the world that we have now. And They also thought that Karl Marx didn't know anything about economics, which is why they built the London School of Economics. And so nations is an abstraction. I had an argument with Will Chamberlain once about whether or not the United States of America is just a how did I frame it? I was just listening to it last night. It's a fallacy that we all agree to. It's just, I mean, it's a fiction. That's it. It's a fiction that we all agree to. Countries are fictions that we agree to. Money is a fiction that we agree to. And I'm going to play a video about that in a minute. And so I think that if the frame of Germans doesn't work, then get rid of the national framework and then take a look at those groups of people, take a look at their families. I think Freemasonry has a lot to do with it. I think that at the end of the day, the Freemasons have been calling the shots until recently. I don't know if that answers your question. Have you ever read A History of Central Banking and Enslavement of Mankind? It traces a similar telling of Cromwell and the Puritan movement serving the banksters. No, but it sounds interesting, and I'll go look at it, and I'm screenshotting all these things. Okay, so I'll go look at it. It turns out that money winds up becoming the most important thing because morality, as a lot of people are mentioning Michael Jones here in the comments, morality, and I think that the last video that I'm going to say speaks to this, but if money is not a expression of a moral government, then it winds up becoming this amoral thing that we're dealing with right now. And, you know, Michael Jones says it, and Alexander Del Mar said it, and Stephen, what's his last name? Marlenga said it. And I think it's true. I mean, I think that money is ultimately the way that you get people to value what they think is important. And if money is not attached to morality, then you get the society that we have right now. Question: government shutdown. Does anyone notice? No one in my circle. What does that say? Well, let's see. Our Social Security check's still going out. I know that the food stamps are supposed to stop. I get Social Security, so I have to go check and see if I'm still getting my Social Security. But I have enough saved that I could probably wait this thing out, but without a big problem. But does anybody notice? Yeah, all the poor people. And then, so Xanadu Zimba, then you have to ask yourself the question: if all of the people who are getting food stamps are the ones who are really noticing right now, and I would say that was probably a huge percentage of them. I mean, there's probably a lot of people who are on disability and stuff like that who may be impacted, and I feel sorry for them. But maybe that what they want is that they want those people in the street and burning buildings down so that they can call the National Guard or send them to FEMA camps or something. I don't know. I don't know. I hear a lot of people complaining about it. I don't know anyone who's personally impacted by it, though. I guess that makes me an elite or something, right? Polly says, could it be that the knowledge through the internet, like here on the Duke Report, is making the public more intelligent than the ruling class? Will this scare them off? I hope so. And part of the reason, and I know that I keep banging this drum, but part of the reason that I'm making all these 6-minute explainers is because I spent a lot of time and energy creating 1,500 word summaries of books, and I just don't think that many people are reading anymore. I think that they're all described by TikTok. And when I saw these 6-minute explainers, I thought I can compete with real information in the TikTok attention span. And that's why I've been making these things. So download them, steal them. I'm going to put them on. I'm going to make them all available as downloads at some point. I'm too busy making them right now. And all of this stuff, I'm a one-man band. I've got me and Jessica, helps me with the day-to-day stuff, living. But it's just two of us doing this. And if you can be so kind to go to buymeacoffee.com/the Duke Report and help out, we appreciate that. The best way to keep us ongoing is to subscribe on Substack. Go to thedukereport.substack.com and become a paid subscriber. You don't get a lot of added benefits. I invite people to a Zoom call. I try to do it once a month. And I want this stuff to be as available as possible in as many different formats as possible. None of the things that I'm doing are substitutes for reading the book by Guido Preparata's Incubation of Nazism. If you don't want to spend the time to read Conjuring Hitler, okay, read Two World Wars and Hitler. If you only read one book this year, if you only read one book the rest of your life, except the Bible, read Two World Wars and Hitler, because it will reframe your reality. You will not look at the world the same way that you look at it now. And so will this scare them off? I don't think it'll scare them off. What will scare them off is if enough people buy these t-shirts and get pitchforks and then start showing up. And I don't want to be the leader. I want everybody to go get their own shirt, get their own pitchfork. You can get the pitchforks on Amazon. You can get a can of black spray paint. You can spray paint it black. I make my pitchforks black because they're scarier. Because people who think that weapons that are black are more lethal than weapons that are not black, but they're not. But if you had a black pitchfork in this shirt, and there were 50 of you and you showed up at your next school board meeting, they might make you leave the pitchforks outside. Then maybe we could start to have some kind of effect, but it's definitely not voting. Like voting isn't really going to fix anything. So we need to be able to start having conversations about this stuff, but we can't actually even have the conversation if we don't really actually know what the real history of the world is. And we don't get taught that in school. And so I don't assume that it'll scare off. I assume that they've got plans for people like me. But I'm trying to not be a movement. Like Charlie Kirk. I think I've told you the story before about this friend of mine whose father was very wealthy and was in the real estate business. And when he became disabled and mentally, and all of this chicanery went down to rob her from her birthright, from the money that she was going to get. And at one point I told her, I looked at her and I said, you're just kind of like a normal person. Maybe the money didn't want you to have it, because she's not evil. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what she would do with the money except probably continue the property management business that her father was running. I don't know. But in any case, I said to her, I don't think that the money wanted you to have it. So I'm trying to maintain a low profile. I'd like to be the #1 education site on Substack. I'd like to increase the amount of subscribers that I've got by magnitude. If I could increase it by a magnitude, my life would be very comfortable. I'd be able to do this. If I could increase it by more than that, I might be able to hire people and have an office and be more organized. I don't know, but I'm just trying to kick this stuff out so that people, Matt and Cynthia's organization is called Rising Tide because it raises all boats. I want to raise all boats. Some people don't like the AI. Okay, fine. You don't have to listen to my stuff, but I tell you this, if you go onto my YouTube and listen or watch all the video explainers that I've made, or go onto my Substack and watch them, or go onto my SoundCloud channel and listen to the 200. I've got over 200 books on the SoundCloud channel now. You will get, in effect, a master's degree in foreign affairs from Georgetown. If you listen to all of those things and you understand them, you'll be smarter than all of the people on television. And if enough of you become smarter than all the people on television, then maybe you'll have an impact on all of your friends. Maybe you'll be able to explain this to them. So, I go for the Matthew 18:20 approach, which is where two or more gathered in fellowship. Like, take this information, share it with a few close friends, get them to share it with a few close friends. That's how we win, because that becomes unmanageable that will scare them off. If the truth, Christianity was the truth, and it spread like Christianity, right? If the truth can spread like Christianity spread in the first, 6 centuries of Christianity, then they can't stop it. They'll try to infiltrate it. They'll try to impact it. But if we stay low profile, if we keep it to groups of 2 or 3 people, then it's going to be hard to stop. All right, here we go. Annie says, tangential question. Thought about the auto hoaxers over the infinite plane. I don't know what that is. You could send me a link or something. contact@thedukereport.com. I don't know what that is. I'm too busy making explainers about things that I do know. Carrie Shaw says, current events are making the edge of a deep historic dive more compelling. Fun to read. The International Jew by Henry Ford. I think I have all 4 volumes of the International Jew by Henry Ford on the book section of the Duke Report. And I haven't dug into it too much. I did the descriptions, but I haven't dug into it too much, because I think that Henry Ford was being played by British intelligence. Because again, all this anti-Semitism is an epistemological fallback position. I believe that the British elites hire people who are Jewish to run things on purpose, because, and again, I think this is kind of this is a hole in the Michael Jones ontology of the world. I think that these people are hired. I think Larry Fink is, and Larry Ellison, and pick whoever you want to pick who's Jewish, who's in control of something. I think that these people are hired on purpose. The boards of directors hire these people on purpose because they know that that eventually it will get to this, and then they can claim anti-Semitism. And I think Henry Ford was played by British intelligence. I think that they gave him all this protocols to learned elders of Zion. I mean, 1920, Winston Churchill writes his editorial about the International Jew in Great Britain. And these are all canards, right? These are all decoys. They put the Jews out as decoys, so people will go after the decoys. And that's why the whole, I was going to talk about the number of people, whether or not it's Candace Owens or Milo Yiannopoulos or Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or the list goes on and on. All of these people who are coming out as against Israel. Well, Candace is married to the son of a British lord, and Tucker is a member of, or has he has been listed as a member of the Pilgrim Society, which is the which are the handlers for the Anglo-American establishment. Okay, so if you understand that Zionism was born in Great Britain and that Israel serves an epistemological warfare strategy in the American establishment's game plan, then, which started out as the Anglo game plan, then this all makes complete sense. Okay. And this is coming from a guy who designed the online education system for the Shoah Foundation Institute. And and we used to joke that we were part of the Holocaust industrial complex, which isn't really a joke. It's a real thing. So, so my thought is that Henry Ford got punked to his detriment, and so you can read it, but if you understand that what it is a giant manipulation, and the intent of it is to assign agency to people who don't really have agency, then that goes back to the conceit of my book, Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy, which is that you need to separate the Jews from what's going on and then trace back the agency to the people who are really doing it. So I don't know if that answered your question. Polly says, do you set aside time every day to read? Yes. How do you do that? My wife reads to me every morning. We read a chapter from the Old Testament, a chapter from the New Testament. I have been, instead of watching television at night, I sit down on that sofa after dinner, and lately I've been reading my wife 2 World Wars and Hitler while she knits. And then I make these descriptions and explainers, and I try to read as much of those books as is possible. But obviously, there are so many hours in the day. So I'm either reading or writing all day long. I would say that my consumption of media is probably, and social media included, is probably less than 10% of that time. Most of the time, I'm either writing something, and writing often will involve writing prompts and getting AI to generate stuff, and then editing whatever comes out of the AI. And it's not always great. It doesn't always work well, which is why I've been kind of behind on writing articles lately, because the AI has been fighting me, and I struggle between just sitting down and writing the article myself or having the AI help me. So, but it is a struggle. All right, I'm going to play one more video. And then if you have any other questions, then you can put a Q in front of it and ask. But this is a video that is about money. So here we go. And again, this is all along the epistemological warfare theme.
All right, let's get into it. We usually think of history as something set in stone, right? A story that's already been written down in books. But what if I told you the most honest, the most reliable story isn't written on paper at all? Today, we're teaming up with a fascinating historical detective to see how money itself can unlock some of history's biggest secrets. It's a pretty intense question, isn't it? I mean, we tend to put a lot of faith in the historical records that have been passed down to us, but maybe we shouldn't. Think about it. The official story is almost always written by the winners or by whoever's in power. It's their version that survives. And those records can be twisted. Sagas, chronicles, royal decrees, all of them can be shaped to fit a certain agenda. You can jumble up events, leave out the inconvenient facts, or just flat out invent entire timelines to make your side look better. Suddenly, history isn't just a record, it's a weapon. This incredible insight comes from Alexander Del Mar, the guide for our explainer today. He looked at these ancient Norse sagas and realized they weren't pure history, not even close. He could see they had been tampered with, mutilated, as he so powerfully puts it. So, if the written word can be so easily broken, where do we even begin to look for the truth? Well, what if there was a piece of evidence that was so common, so woven into the fabric of daily life, that you couldn't just erase it? Something that leaves a physical mark on the past, a clue that can't be easily forged. This is where our investigation really begins. Every good mystery needs a detective, right? And ours is a man who dedicated his life to digging through the archives of Europe. But he wasn't just reading old books. No, he was looking at the one piece of evidence that tells its own unvarnished story: money. So let's meet our guy, Alexander Del Mar. And listen, he was no amateur. This was a man trained as a civil and mining engineer. He became the director of the U.S. Bureau of Statistics and a U.S. mining commissioner. His life's work led him to this, and get this, he spent 15 years doing original research in Europe's biggest archives and coin collections. He absolutely knew how to follow a trail of evidence. And his number one tool was this: numismatics. Now, for a lot of people, that just means collecting coins. But for Del Mar, oh, it was a science. He argued that coins are like little public monuments. They carry the stamp of the state that made them, they show you what materials were valued, and they tell you who held the power. They are a literal, physical record of an era. Del Mar knew that while other historians were getting stuck with texts that could be fakes, the study of coins, numismatics, had grown into a serious, rigorous science. It became, as he says, the chief reliance, the main tool, for anyone who was truly serious about uncovering what really happened in the past. So, okay, how does this actually work? Well, Del Mar used this method to crack some major historical cases. First up, how long did the Roman Empire really hang on in Britain? Turns out the coins tell a very different story than the books. You know the old British system, right? Pounds, shillings, and pence. Most people would probably connect that to medieval England, maybe even Charlemagne. But Del Mar, he traced it way, way back. He found it all laid out clear as day in the Roman Theodosian Code from the 5th century. This system was a Roman, through and through. And for Del Mar, the fact that this really complex, kind of weird monetary system stuck around was an unerring clue, a clue that couldn't be wrong. I mean, think about it. Why on earth would the Anglo-Saxons just invent a system like that? They wouldn't. The only reason it survived is because Roman administration and the culture and laws that came with it was still running things in Britain all the way into the 7th century. That's way longer than most historians thought. All right, case number 2. This one is all about the ultimate status symbol of the ancient and medieval world, gold. For Del Mar, figuring out who had the right to mint gold coins was the key to understanding who really held the power. For hundreds of years after the Western Roman Empire supposedly fell, the emperor over in Constantinople, the Basileus, held on to one critical power: the exclusive, almost sacred right to make gold coins. Local kings, sure, they could mint some silver. But gold? That was reserved for the emperor. It was a symbol that, deep down, all of Christendom was still under one supreme leader. So you can imagine when European kings like Edward III of England suddenly started making their own gold coins, that was a huge deal, a seismic event. This wasn't just about economics. It was a direct challenge to the emperor's authority. Every single one of those gold coins was, as Del Mar put it, a declaration of sovereignty, a token of national independence. And wow, you can't get much more blunt than this. When the Pope, who kinda inherited the empire's authority, tried to push around King Philip of France, the king's response was just absolute fire. This quote perfectly captures that moment, the death of the old imperial dream and the birth of independent nations. And it all started with the money. That was the first shot fired in the revolution. So, money can rewrite timelines and declare independence. We've seen that. But Del Mar's investigation uncovered something even more radical. He found that the very type of money a society uses can tell you if it's in the middle of a revolution. And here it is. This is a bold claim, and it's totally counterintuitive. Fiduciary money is just currency that isn't made of gold or silver. We're talking iron, copper, paper. Its value comes purely from the trust people have in the government that issues it. And Del Mar's big argument: this stuff, not gold, is the true currency of liberation. And he brings the receipts. It makes sense when you think about it. When people rise up, what happens to gold and silver? It gets hoarded. It vanishes. So a new revolutionary government has to create its own money to keep things running. Ancient Sparta used iron discs. The American Revolution was literally funded by paper continentals. The French Revolution had its assignats. And when Scandinavia broke free, it was powered by copper clippings. Every single time, a new, state-backed currency was the key to breaking the old chains. And all of this historical detective work leads us right here to the biggest question of all. If the power to create and control money is so incredibly fundamental, who should be the one to hold that power today? For Del Mar, the answer was crystal clear. Creating money isn't just some economic task. He saw it as the most important, most vital function of a sovereign nation. It's the tool that allows a state to manage its economy for the public good and to fuel massive social progress. So this really sets up the central battle that Del Mar saw. On one side, you've got money as a state prerogative, a public utility basically, designed to help everyone. And on the other side, you have money treated as a private commodity, controlled by what he called the goldsmith class, which today we'd call big banks and powerful financial players. He argued that when you let private interests run the show, you get endless instability, these crazy cycles of boom and bust that always seem to help the few at the expense of everyone else. So for a government to give away its power over money, to let private banks issue currency or to peg its value to something it can't control, was, in Del Mar's mind, a total abdication of its most basic duty. It was basically surrendering its sovereignty. Del Mar's journey through history leads us to this one powerful, unavoidable conclusion. Money is never, ever just money. It's a secret history book. It's a declaration of independence. It's the engine of revolution. It is, at its core, the ultimate expression of power. And that leaves us with a really important question for our own time. Del Mar followed the money trail from ancient Roman laws to medieval gold coins. If we follow that same trail today, through central bank decisions, through the rise of crypto, through digital payment apps, we have to ask ourselves the exact same question he did. Who truly holds that power in our world? Because as his incredible work shows us, the answer to that question, well, it defines everything.
How do I get rid of this? Here we go. So I've said this before, but on December 23rd, 1913, the United States Congress, with the signature of Woodrow Wilson, gave away that right. They gave the right, they assigned it to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal and it's not a reserve, and is a privately held bank that's owned by European oligarchs. And effectively, the United States became a part of the British Empire once again, and that was probably the official birthday of the Anglo-American Empire, because very quickly after that, the United States became the arsenal of democracy, and we wound up supplying men and material for World War I and World War II, and here we are today. But one of the things that I was thinking about too, what somebody asked earlier about what I thought about the food stamps, it'll be interesting because there is an opportunity at this point in a crisis for the government to introduce something like a stable coin backed EBT card so that the poor people can start eating again, but we're not paying them in dollars. I don't know, we're paying them in Trumps. And there could be an exchange rate with Trumps and dollars. Again, I'm not saying that I think that will happen, but we can't. The concept isn't that complicated. There's public money that's assigned with that's in line with the government goals, and in the Constitution it says that the federal government's goals are to provide for the common defense, which is common, and that's defense. That's not to make war. That's to defend, and to promote the general welfare. So if there was people in the LaRouche organization call that the American system, Alexander Hamilton's American system. Obviously, it's much older than Alexander Hamilton. But if the Lycurgus was doing it in Sparta, right, you could call it the Spartan program, right? But if you've got a monetary system that's aligned with the morality of the country, and it is providing for the common defense and promoting the general welfare, then you're going to have a different kind of country than if you've got private banks that are in control of the monetary system, which is where we've been since December 23rd, 1913. And it has not only impacted the United States of America, because the dollar is the reserve currency for the world, it impacts every person who's listening. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Okay, Daryl Wayne has a couple of comments. I don't know that I can answer them, but let's see. Daryl Wayne says Israel was designed and implemented to serve as the point of controversy, chaos, and casus belli, the same role that Ulster in Northern Ireland has served for centuries. That Sir Richard Storr, who is the British administrator for the construct of Israel. Okay, so let's go back to this one. So this makes total sense to me because, as some people say, was it George Orwell said, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. They use the same patterns. I learned this from George Webb. They use the same patterns over and over and over again, which is another advantage to kind of looking at the world in an epistemological frame, is that it's much easier to see the patterns, you know. If you're looking for deletions, distortions, generalizations, you're looking for cause effect, complex equivalency, nominalization, you're looking for all of these different tells. You can see the patterns. I said to somebody last week, I think I said it on the show last week, if you learn linguistics, you may not know whether or not something is true or not, but you'll know whether or not the shape of the box seems like it's true or not. If you're ordering a book and you get a box that's 6 feet long, it's probably not a book. You know, that's the way I think about it. And then he said, Sir Richard Storr, who is the British administrator for the construct of Israel from 1918. This is what did they call it? They had a word for it. 1918 to 1940, explained the Zionist objective in his book Orientalist. Okay, I'll screenshot this one. And then maybe I'll do explainers on all these books that people are suggesting. All right. With that, I am going to call it a day. And I will let you know that if you've made it this far, you already know that the Duke Report isn't entertainment. It's an effort to restore reason in an age of manipulation. Every article, podcast, and explainer exists to help you see through the mechanisms of epistemological warfare, what I call EpiWar, the attack on how we know what we know. I built this network from the ground up after losing my home in Pacific Palisades fire on January 7th, 2025. Out of that loss came purpose, to rebuild a platform devoted to truth, evidence, and linguistic awareness. Today, the Duke Report, which includes Jessica over here, includes a book library with nearly 1,000 volumes and in-depth 1,500-word summaries at dukereportbooks.com. Each title connects to podcasts, video explainers, and research notes, tools for anyone willing to think for themselves. On SoundCloud, you'll find long-form discussions covering over 200 books. I might be close to 300 at this point. On YouTube, new explainers appear daily, designed to sharpen the mind and strengthen the will. I provide all of this freely without paywalls or advertising algorithms deciding what you see. But building and maintaining this archive carries real costs, time, tools, and labor. If you believe in this work and you want it to continue, you can support it directly. Subscribe to thedukereport.substack.com to receive articles and updates, and make a one-time contribution through buymeacoffee.com/thedukereport. Your support helps keep this thing going. The battle for freedom begins in the mind. Strengthen your discernment, question the frame, and live free in truth. With that, I will say thanks for joining me. Thanks for sticking with me this far, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, everybody.